Good morning, guys. We are going to start a new chapter. We are starting on geometry. The first section we're going to go over is a lot of vocabulary as far as different types of angles, different ways that you will be asked to name an angle, what angles are, what a degree is. So we're going to get into that and then go over some examples. There are several examples on here that match your homework. So make sure if you don't understand your homework that you're at least going to the point in the video where you see something similar to what's on your homework so you guys have an understanding of it. Make sure that when you guys are reading the questions that you're reading the whole question. For example, on page 152 for your homework, it says name each angle in 4 ways and classify it. So make sure you're naming it and you're classifying what it is. Make sure you hit both of those points, okay? So just some key vocabulary, and some of these are explained. Actually, all of this is explained on page 151 in that box where it kind of has a breakdown of all of the vocabulary for you to look at. So an angle has 2 sides that share a common endpoint. So if I were to draw a shape that looked like this that has an angle, there are 2 sides that share a common endpoint. Where they meet would be the angle. The degrees is what angles are measured in. So if I were to measure this, it could be like a 65-degree angle, and I would put that right here in the degree symbol behind it. So the degree symbol like temperature, but minus the Celsius or Fahrenheit. The vertex is the point where the sides meet. So this right here is your vertex, the actual point. And what we're going to first talk about is how angles can be named in several ways. In the symbol that you guys are going to see on your paper and on the video is this little thing right here. It kind of looks like the less than symbol, but it's flat on the bottom and then pointing up. So that's the symbol for angle. When you're naming angles, you'll put that and then what follows. Okay. So getting into naming angles is the next slide that we're going to look at. So this example right here, So this example right here is your angle. The points are all going to be labeled. So there's a point A, a point B, and a point C. And this is asking you to name the angle at the right, which is the only angle that you guys can see. This is an example of how to name the angle 4 different ways. So in your homework, when it says name it 4 different ways, the ways that are kind of already listed on here, but that I'm going to show you are naming it those 4 ways. So the first way you can name it is to use the vertex. So remember the vertex, sorry, I'm on my mouse tool, not my draw tool. So this right here, the point where they meet, is your vertex. So you are going to use that middle point as your middle letter. So B is the middle, and you guys can see that over here where I just underlined. So there are 2 ways to write it like this. You can say angle A, B, and C. So angle A is over here, B is the middle, and then C is where it continues. Or you can list it backwards and do CBA. So as long as the vertex or the middle point is the middle letter, that's fine. So those are 2 ways out of the 4. Then you can use the vertex only. So just writing angle B, because that's where my actual angle is. Remember, the definition of an angle is where the 2 sides share a common endpoint. Or in this case, there's also a number listed. So you could use the number to write angle 1. So what I just circled are your 4 ways that you can write this. So we're going to go over one more example of naming them. So right here, sorry, So right here, there's a similar shape, and then it's going to ask you to name the angle in 4 ways. So I have S or 2 as my vertex, and then R and T to the side. So if I were to name these angles using the first type on the last slide, I have angle TSR or angle RST. So my S or my 2 is my middle point. So as long as the S is in the middle, and then my other letters can kind of just flip. Or I can just have angle S since that's the vertex, or angle 2 as the number. So those are your 4 ways to write the angle. Then getting into the different types of angles, and you guys have all of this. It's not necessarily listed with the measurements on here. There's a couple, but looking at this, there are 4 types for right now that we're going to talk about. There are different types of these types that we will eventually get into. Once you take your actual geometry class, you'll get into a lot more of angles and naming them and that type of thing. So this is just the basic information that you guys need to be familiar with. So looking at an acute angle, it's less than 90. So I know my teachers always taught me that it was acute, and because it was cute, it was little. A right angle is always at 90 degrees. So if you guys see this box right here, that tells you that it's always a 90-degree angle because it's showing you that. Then you have an obtuse angle, which is larger than 90 degrees, but less than 180. And the reason for that is because once you guys hit a degree of 180, it's just a flat line. So these are the 4 angles that you guys are going to see or be asked to name throughout your homework. So classifying these really quickly, you have a couple questions like this. So if it's flat, that would be your straight angle. That one's pretty straightforward. Then this would be your right angle. The reason I automatically know that is this little box right here tells me it's a right angle. And then between these two, I know you guys don't have an actual protractor or can measure, but if it's larger than a right angle, it's going to be obtuse. And then if it's smaller than that, it is going to be acute. Sorry. So this is when it says to classify an angle, this is really all you guys are doing is writing which one of these it is on this homework assignment. These are the only 4 that you guys have to choose from. So the last 2 things or last 2 types of angles are what are called vertical angles. And then the next slide we'll talk about adjacent angles. So 2 angles are vertical when they are opposite, specifically when 2 lines intersect one another. So, and I'm gonna use different colors really quick so you guys can see this better. So this is one line, and then if I were to have a second line, so these 2 lines intersected, then I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 just in order. So angle 1 and 3, because they are across from each other, are vertical angles, and then angles 2 and 4 are vertical angles. So it's really just the angle that's across from one another. Angle 1 and 3 formed because of the red line, and then angle 2 and 4 formed because of the purple line that I just drew. So when it's asking if they're vertical or if they're adjacent, if they're kind of diagonally across from each other, then they're going to be a vertical angle. And then this last type right here is what is called an adjacent angle. So you guys can see that the picture looks the same, but it's asking you to name them differently. So the vertical angles that we just talked about are still 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, but now it's asking you to name the adjacent angles. So if you think about what adjacent means, it just means that they're next to one another, if you're adjacent to something. So The adjacent angles would be 1 and 2. I'm going to circle these really quick just so you guys can see them. So 1 and 2 are adjacent to each other. Then 2 and 3 are also next to one another, to use a different word. Then 3 and 4 are next to each other. And then lastly, 4 and 1 or 1 and 4 are next to each other. So you would write angle 1 and angle 2. Make sure you're using the angle symbol. I know I did not on here just because I was typing quickly. So when it's asking you if they're adjacent, it just means if they're directly next to each other. So not across from each other, but next to each other. And then this other picture down here just shows you that as well. So this is an obtuse angle with a line through it, creating acute angles. So 1 and 2 are next to each other, so they would be adjacent angles as well. Then this last slide, because you have one question like this on your homework, I just wanted to go over it. It's the angle or the figure on your homework page looks a little bit different, but I know it's kind of overwhelming to take a bunch of different types of angles and put them in one, but I just wanted to go over this really quick. So your homework is asking you to find different types of angles. So it's asking you to find acute, straight, right, and obtuse angles out of this shape. So if I were looking at this, and if I were talking about straight angles, just for example, I'm going to use white so it shows up better. So if I'm talking about a straight angle from this picture, my straight line that I have is from A to C. P is actually in the middle. So my angle of my straight line, I could say angle APC. So that would be this line right here and drawing on top of white, and white is difficult for you to see. So angle APC is your straight angle. Then if I were to ask you to find a right angle, this right here, again, this box right here tells me, but my right angle would be, I could write BPC. So I have B right here. P is kind of the middle point of everything, and then C. So this would be my right angle. And if I was talking about an acute angle, so remember that is an angle that is less than 90 degrees. So I have this angle, I actually have multiple angles. So this right here would be an acute angle, this would be an acute angle, this would all be acute angles. So any of those that you want to name. This has a W in the middle, so I could just say angle W, or you could do A, P is again the middle point to everything, and then D, so I had A, the P, and the D. And then lastly, if I'm talking about an obtuse angle, so an obtuse angle is anything that is greater than 90 degrees. So this right here would be an example of an obtuse angle. I know there's a line going through it as well, but this is kind of a bigger angle. So the obtuse would be angle CPD. So I have C, P again is my middle, and then D. So this is greater than 90, but less than 180. So this would be my obtuse angle. Okay. So if you need to use different colors on your homework to draw it out or figure it out or kind of dissect it a little bit, just figure it out the best that you can. Use the letters that are there for you. Know that if it doesn't have the box, so for example, this side, and I used pink for right. So this side right here would also be a right angle. It doesn't have the box, but you could add one. It's still the same lines. There's just something intersecting it now. So angle APB would still be an example of another right angle. So if the box isn't there, just make sure you're looking. They're not always going to put the box there as a giveaway for you to know that it's a right angle. But if it's back to back like that, it's probably a right angle, even if something is going through it. So if you guys have questions, please reach out to me. Please let me know. I hope this explained that a little bit better for you guys. I know geometry can be a little bit challenging. So if you have questions, concerns, if you don't understand something, let me know, and I am more than willing to help you guys. Have a great rest of the day.